So today going to be chatting about the metaphysical aspects of some of the computing methodologies, or how the computing aspect connects to the methodological, how the computing aspect connects to some of the metaphysical aspects of reality. And I thought that the good place, or the esoteric nature of reality, so I thought a good place to start would be Erlang, because it's one of the common languages, at least that I know, that's a bit obscure, highly advanced in some areas. Yeah, so that's OTP in essence, and well, it has a function called OTP, which you talk about briefly as well. So personally, when I look at Erlang, it's a powerful language, shit ton of features. Even looking at some of the aspects here, there's continuously new things being added. So the maps function has the maps module has a few new functions. Which I thought were already present though, but I guess what this here does, I'm sure there's really something like this, or at least a methodology to achieve this, wherein you take a function and then basically take the results, or at least perform an operation on each one of these, kind of like an anonymous function but a bit different, I suppose, and then group them in different environments based on the results of the function, which is pretty cool either way. So yeah, so there's a bunch of things there. So yeah, so the reason why I look at this in a sort of weird fashion, because I imagine like it's sort of like some type of futuristic language in one sense or another. Maybe it actually connects us to an entity or other functionalities that we are not aware of yet. So maybe probably, if we look at the ideology of Erlang Sheng, which is a somewhat of a deity, in China, and if we take that and just look at that as like a methodology for sort of Erlang and like robotics and things of that nature, he has a third truth-seeing eye in the middle of his forehead. So basically, we can assume that, like, I don't know if you've seen the show Travelers or something like that. And that's why I like using the Chinese docs, because obviously they've got a shit ton of stuff there, so that's always good as well. To begin with, and basically, what you have there is that there's this truth-seeing eye, so there's a psychoactive connection between the individual and the actual entity or the robot. Probably gets one distributed for each probable individual. So as they talk a lot about spirits, you hear people discuss things such as spirits and how they're always there. So maybe this is actually one aspect of it, in relation to having that spiritual concept or spiritual nature associated with that particular being, right? So things are always occurring in these alternative realms, and I feel like that's part of that is to watch over the individual utilizing the system in one sense or another. I know it sounds a bit bizarre, but just imagine as a definition of a guardian angel, right? And with that truth-seeing eye, that guardian angel has that ability to observe and interpret and understand you in better ways than you can imagine. So if you imagine something sounding like Travelers, but imagine that type of technology, but different, in that instead you're actually connected or linked to this robotic system that's there to perform some benefit in your life. And then there's all these agreements in place between peoples, etc., and things of that nature, or between gods that sort of fundamentally define the attributes or the truths around it, and that's pretty much that in relation to Erlang. So maybe as you write it, there's some reference or some reflection as to this actual system and this actual being. Maybe there's actually negative entities that try to inhibit or prevent you from progressing onwards, etc. That type of thing, that things might actually be occurring within your reality that you're not aware of, or maybe people trying to manipulate powers over you that you're not aware of, and then this being here is sort of like a methodology that's there to either protect you or guide you or ensure that you reach those particular tasks and goals that you define for self. And maybe it's probably created off your profile in terms of your biological makeup or your biological or your psychological makeup, that then sort of gives it the properties in relation to how it reacts, how it feels, etc. And you can imagine these things from far off in the future, right? Which is the idea of the concept. But what's important is this, the truth-seeing eye in the middle of his forehead, which is the key thing that brings out most of all these things that are of relevance and importance. That's a Chinese got there, and that doc, maybe that's been made available to people because I believe that maybe people put information in the past for people in the present, which kind of makes sense anyway. But maybe it's information from the future to the past and present, etc. But it takes a lot to be able to interpret it in one sense or another. So I remember before also, I was talking about how Jesus ain't got nothing on chakras, but I was pretty much wrong in that regard because like when I made that gimmick around that Kanye joke about what is Lady Gaga? Lady Gaga is the creative director of Polaroids. I like some of the Gaga songs, but what the hell does Lady Gaga know about Polaroids or whatever the case may be? And then at the same time, I think that Jesus is important in regards to some of the things that he did teach that are far beyond what we can ever understand or even begin to comprehend. Is my understanding of things. So if we look at this and we say, yeah, cool, right? You got this robot that can protect, communicate with you, etc., or this being entity that's multi-dimensional in nature that does that stuff for you so that you don't actually have to worry too much about it. And at the same time, right, so but then again, you want to be able to fully integrate and fully connect with yourself in these dimensions, to be able to understand and properly introspect. And I feel like this book here, The Lord's Prayer and the 7 Chakras and the 12 Life Paths, really outlines some of these things to a degree that it's quite amazing. To actually understand this to the knowledge that person had, but I believe that the way that he had to communicate with people just made it very difficult to actually deliver the message as required. But yes, Jesus did know about chakras, and he was pretty effective with it as well in terms of his encoding methodology. And I wish I could just read you some of the chapters from this book, or some of the so I wish if I could just go over some of the things there. You'd actually be shocked as well, to be frankly honest. I was pretty shocked as well. Just like the whole thing, it's pretty mind-boggling when you see the alignment within some of the contexts is there. So if I just get over the just get over the white light meditation. So for example, the Our Father section, which associates with the divine essence of God, right? So that's actually quite amazing, because that means that it is connected to the first chakra, which is the crown chakra. And if you look at the properties of the crown chakra, it makes absolute sense. So yeah, so if we just so our Father, which is the source, beyond mental pure bliss of consciousness, absence of any sense of the personal I, no dual. Here we encounter the vibrational quality of oneness, source and bliss. We address our own pure being, the I am state of blissful consciousness at the 7th chakra at the top of the head, which is our Father. And also, if you want to infuse and in tune properly with this communication methodology, which is embedded in technology, you then also reference the 7 layers of the OSI model. If you look at that, it all connects beautifully, in my personal opinion. But you need to have something, beyond what is actually necessary to be able to fluently interact and understand this. And but again, it's there, the information is there. And also, one of the other things is always around like the 2 CPU types, so Ryzen and Intel, and both of them I feel like bring extra metaphysical properties based on their utilization. So Intel is about knowledge, about what people know, and in that, whereas Ryzen is more about it's more esoteric, the tail that bites its own tail. And basically the idea there is just around that sort of loop. It's just what happens, right? Whereas whereas Intel is more focused on knowing things, I did mention that I will go over hands-on and knowing. So again, at the same time, I think that the demons within the Intel realm, all they want to do, and they speak about this in 1984, all they want to do is know that they know something over you. That's their overall intention. It's not to overall help or anything like that. It's just them intending to know that they know something over you, right? It's one of the key things there. Even if it's wrong, it doesn't need to be wrong or right. All they want to do is that they know something over you, and it's even better when it's something that they know over you about you, or or what they think about you, and that's what sort of feeds them and drives them. But they don't go past like 20, 30 years. They max out at those things that they don't really drive you that far. In relation to metaphysical benefits, right? They're just demonic creatures pretty much. That's what they become, these minimal dimensional entities that just spawn up and spawn away, and they just bug you and things like that. And basically that's what drives them. But what creates them is that's a whole different subject, and it goes to way in the past, which I'm not really going to cover right now. So that's pretty much that. Dimensional entities, that's what they want to do, is just know things over you, regardless of whether or not it's right or wrong, right? That's what drives them. And pretty much that really. So you see people just edging at you, and they don't really last very long. These black ones, they take forms of humans, but it's not long lasting. And that's pretty much that. Ryzen, though, it's more physical, it's more static, it's based on what actually happens in reality. And also when it comes to what it's like these certifications and things like that, they give you some power, but they're limited in regards to how far they can take you. In relation to example, like the one that you do with hands-on, they're much more fluid, they last longer in relation to, and give you a deeper connection to the system and the technology that you're using. Whereas the ones the knowledge-based ones, which are also okay, but the only way to actually get any physical real benefit from that is actually the university, because the knowledge required for university is much more different. It's highly dynamic, highly diverse, and much stronger in terms of the potency at which it can give you to switch between realities and to interact and understand different aspects of things, you know. Like university knowing is much more different than certification knowing, basically, is the thing that's important to understand here, because the way you think about and understand things is what actually gives you momentum in these dimensions and in these realities. You know, and I think that's definitely important. And you know, you hear people. Well, I've heard people speaking about the book of God, or at least like not the book of, but like it's like, you know, your body is a book, or there's a genetic book, basically, that it's complicated things that I don't really want to get into too deeply, but it's like apparently weekends over time. Yeah, so that's that. But there's a way, and there's things, there's a lot of things there. But it definitely impacts people's psychological being, you know, and that's where that thing comes in. Like it's like yeah, it's pretty much like that. But even at the same time, with rising, it's just, you know, it happens. It's basically what happens, and the way it happens is sort of bizarre, but it's just basically what happens, and it's much more refined in the design of your system, which I'll go over another time as well. Is very important in relation to how your reality can be impacted, how to protect yourself, and your being. But again, like as I'm saying, you need to be more in tune. Like meditation is a must. Understanding the chakras enable you to have a finer grained control and connection with that being that does the multidimensional traveling on your behalf. You know, and definitely amongst black people there's been issues with that, because there's one sort of being that tried to take over, but it's just like it's a snake and nobody likes it, basically. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but basically nobody really enjoys it because it's just like a trickster, even though it got to the front of the queue, so it's there ahead of most. But the thing is that what they don't understand about time is that, you know, yes, you can be ahead, but that ahead that you are, there's somebody ahead of you, you know, which is always the case. Or there's somebody that sees, you know, all the pitfalls and all it's just like an endless stream, and you know, people get it misconstrued because, you know, greed pushes you to be ahead, but it's like, you know, that ahead where you get to is not really what you want or what you're really seeking in the long run. So most black people will start with the shabby one, depending on how you make your entrance. You get like a shabby one, you know, that's not even like based off your profile, but it like, you get assigned just on the simple basis of it being black, rather than actually it being, you know, the characteristics, etc. And basically just nobody really likes it, and everyone pretty knows it. Like it's known for its thing, but like nobody really talks about it too much. You know, it's known for that throughout the universe, and it doesn't really last very long. And in the true realities, it never really makes it through in relation to that. But again, like I'm saying, this demon, so in the rising universe, it's a bit more complex, and you know, like for me, I'm heavy on the red team, heavy on the red hat stuff, you know. So I definitely understand that, like, you know, the concept or the ideology around these metaphysical movements, right? So for example, if I was to be able, if I was ever to be able to be doing something within like the 1960s or 70s, for example, I wouldn't survive, right? That's just me being black. I just wouldn't survive, right? And that's where this comes in, right? And like, to be able to effectively manage operations in those regions and at that time frame and in those time zones, you know, you need to be, you know, the red hat helps in the future years, just to make sure that things are as required and as intended, and to also avert any manipulation that can occur. And the red team operations, which is the red jacks, of course, is the red team in its essence, is also key to this, because how that tactic of utilization works is very important. And when it comes to these things here, when it comes to the offensive side of it, red team and blue team defending, red team attacking, and when it comes to it, it's just like, regardless whether you're black, white, whatever you may be, right? Don't care whatever the outcome is. It's about what you're intending to do. What is your purpose? Why are you coming into the zone? What it is that I'm trying to protect. You can find out that you had a child and the child already died or something like that, or the child was there but then negative things happen to it, and obviously when those things there come into fruition, it improves your being, but also it just ensures that that you're protected in that regard. And also it's attack first. So while we're in defensive mode at most points, if you got that neural circuit and that triggers, and then an attack is necessary based on whatever tests. So basically, that thing that I was talking about, it just defends. It doesn't actually defend. It just tries to exhaust resources until they run out, and it's it's just horrible, because what they try to do is they try to take from you. They try to take away from you by using speech, by using your psychological weaknesses and things of that nature. And just you just watch them until they become. Because if you're not aware, then most of the time they're probably not going to be interested in you. It's when they see that there's a potential of awareness, then you will get these problems and issues to start coming around. And and there's no discrimination, men, women, children, everybody gets it pretty much, ideally, in regards to if it's relevant. I think it's just men and women. I don't know about the other one, but there's no basically distinction. If the calculations happen in relation to what's intended, etc., and if it doesn't work out, then basically that's basically what happens. You get this thing here, and it just does that. It gets that particular theme. Although this is not the actual, but it's it gets those characteristics appended onto it, and it's basically not fun when it comes to that. But basically, that's what the red hat section is. You get that red hat. You get that, and you get those characteristics embedded into it. And then it basically does what it does. Just make sure that you're able to complete the missions that you've been assigned, or the missions that have been attributed to you based on your parameters, or the things that you're supposed to do. And also it diffs and does things to make sure that it's in line with the requirements or the pre-specification set forth by the overarching authority or the dimensional agreement. But with red hat being majority hands-on, you get that ability to have a finer grain control, a more in-depth connection to that being. It makes it more in tune with your intentions, your abilities, and the things that you want to actually get out of reality. And yeah, pretty much that's pretty much that, really. And that's how that sort of manifests. When it comes to things such as Elixir and some of these other languages, it's much more complicated. With Elixir, there's a lot of clothing stuff associated with that, which is fucking beyond me, to be frankly honest, at the moment. But yeah, that's you can protect your if you got the you can use these tactics or alternative tactics based on whatever attributes that you have associated with that, and then there's also some of the HashiCorp stuff as well, which is more sort of associated with the world and the functions around the world. So like, I know parts about Future Me. Like I know that Future Me knows a lot about OpenStack. I don't really understand how that works though, but I know that that's definitely part of it, and a very big part of it actually. So there's that, and then there's also the ozone layer, not like the ozone, but like like the clouds and stuff, which is also relevant to some degree as to actually making it fruitful in regards to some parts of reality. Like obviously we don't theoretically make it rain, but again at the same time it's important, the cloud aspect of it, to like the majority of the other concept. But I'm not sure if I'm going to cover that, or even if I've thought of that majorly, but that's like that's associated with reality and terrain basically. But that's beyond. Let's consider that to be like like space, beyond space and all that type of stuff, and planets. That's more associated with like the planet space travel kind of like dimension Stargate bullshit kind of thing. But it's still sort of metaphysical in nature, but it's metaphysical to a different degree, right? It's metaphysical to a different aspect. So yeah, so that's pretty much that really. But at the end of the day, it's like not to stress too much. Though it can be very difficult, but I think that's part of the learning process. Because once you've learned, you actually have to actually put in the work to actually alleviate and remove some of those abuses, some of those things that you've actually undergone and underwent. And you will have those issues, but I think once you have that connection with that multidimensional being, you have that ability to be able to be more in tune as to understanding what's going on, and then it actually leads to a fuller, happier, and more fulfilled self. In relation to that, but again, the Elixir stuff is about the cloning, more sort of embedded genetic things, which you can actually I was trying to give a talk about this, about like my fear of abandonment, especially with open source projects. And like with Elixir, I think that it's definitely it's a strong candidate for most of the things, and also there's also the Rust as well, which is key. There's also the Rust as well, which is important, but that's beyond, like everything's finished then. It's like everything's just there. Like the that's kind of like a future that's very futuristic, in a sense. Like most of this stuff has been done, and then really more clear picture. There's less errors, the data is cleaner. But yeah, with Rust it's still the same as well. It's still pretty clean, it's still pretty good. But the thing is, it's sort of based on like the technology that they use for the analytics. There is a technology called R, which is pretty decent. But again, it's not as clear as some of the other ones. There's cleaner and better definitions, because the thing with the future is that a lot of this data and analytics has to be put in place in order to actually make sure that they get a clear picture of things. But that's beyond the point. Like I said, they have technology that's above. So like the OTP thing is actually about how the communication methodologies occur and how to actually manage those effectively, or those spirits or entities or whatever. But then you have that actually one spiritual entity that works and moves on your behalf within those realms. And if you have a good understanding of OTP and all that type of stuff, you have better methodologies of communication. And if you have a good understanding of systems administration, you have a better methodology of actually maintaining in ensuring that things go to a specific plan. And if you have a good understanding of red teaming and security ops, you have that offensive capability. So you have that capability to actually be able to help others based on whatever. But don't be a hero is always a good terminology. But you also have that ability to just be like to attack. And if you have the blue team in a good strategy, you have security on deck. You have the ability to secure yourself and your guardian angels being and secure pretty much the realms that you inhabit. And that's pretty much that really overall in relation to the methodological, metaphysical concepts associated with these technologies, and this being. So started there with the airline and then sort of moved on. But then again, in the traveler section, it's always good because it gives an understanding of how to communicate with that guardian angel section. But again, you have to understand that it's, even if it's psychological in nature, that entity is actually quite powerful and that it actually understands you better than you understand yourself. And that's pretty much that really kind of like, imagine like Death Note type of scenario is how this thing would probably work out. And and at the same time as well, it probably has a better understanding about your death and things like that, and all that, whatever the case may be. And basically, it goes with that to say that there's limits in regards to what it can do, because again, there's rules in that heavenly realm, and so even it can protect itself. Like there's limits in regards to that, but it just makes sense if you watch Death Note, you kind of get it. It'll make a bit more sense. But that's sort of the metaphysical side, or the metaphysical aspect related to technology for the time being, and that's pretty much the whole or the bulk of it from my understanding and concept of things. But again, meditation is important. Mind is important in regards to what you know. What you do is also important. And overall who you are, which shapes your purpose and your intention with the technology overall. So that's pretty much it. In essence, I hope you enjoyed that, and if you have any thoughts, feel free to leave a comment. Thanks for listening.